Welcome to the Lamper Customs YouTube channel. Tonight we're going to be working on 1995 C4 Corvette. Recently posted some year-old videos of an engine swap, and we burned up the transmission autocrossing already this year. So got it up on the lift. As you can see, already disconnected exhaust, lowered the transmission on the jack so that we can get to the upper bolts and remove drive shaft and disconnected from the C-beam. So tonight we're going to be taking the transmission out, setting it on the ground, removing the tail shaft snout, and putting a drain plug into the oil pan so we can reinstall. So the trick with doing transmission removal is getting those far up there bolts while it's in the car. So you use a really long 3/8 extension, swivel, and a socket. Problem is, as you can see, the socket and swivel are pretty much unruly. So I'm going to show you my trick. So with it being unruly, flippity floppity, you take electrical tape and you tape it up. And by taping it up, it's stiffer and more controllable, where it won't move, and you can leverage it. Right there we got a nut on that, a bunch of ground wires. We take the ground wires off, we can actually get to the bolt that holds it. So those are the last two bolts holding the transmission in. We'll leave the top one until we get the cooler lines removed, which honestly I could have already taken them off, but it is what it is. Jack's underneath, transmission, everything's solid. Okay, so right here on the side of the transmission you've got your cooler lines. They run up to the radiator or an external cooler, or it could be both. Could go to the radiator, then out to an external cooler. So when you're dealing with brake lines, training lines, anything that is a line, you want to use a line wrench because it gets you as close to being 360 degrees around as you're going to get and still be able to go around that line. Sometimes you can't hardly get in there to get hooked, but there we go, we got that one. Break it loose. Now I've already drained the transmission, so there's probably going to be fluid coming out of here. And once you get it broke loose, you can switch to an open end and not worry about rounding off the nuts. Also short ones. This is a very short half-inch wrench, 13 millimeter, very similar. But you can get in here and swing that baby because there's not a lot of room, as you can see. And you'll have this on any transmission setup, whether you're dealing with a lift or on the ground. Clearance is always an issue because you can only tilt that engine back and down so much for clearance. Now this engine's an LT1. There is no distributor on the back of the block, so you've got a ton more clearance than if you had a traditional rear distributed small block Chevy. Okay, a little bit of work. We got the transmission cooler lines out. All of the bell housing bolts on the passenger side are now disconnected. Driver's side wiring is disconnected. Bell housing bolts, we've got that one right there in the top left. As you can see, it's kind of tight. It's kind of tight to the bell housing and the firewall. So we'll do a short socket and we'll come in from over top of the transmission, so we're coming in tight. So I didn't come in from over the top of the transmission. I came in at a very aggressive angle, but it clears that pinch weld there on the firewall, if you can see that. With the swivel and the short socket with the tape on it, we'll be able to get that loose and drop the training. Alright, looks like the transmission shifted a little bit. Our camera got knocked around a little bit. Adjust our screws. And it's time to back it away from the block and start bringing it down. We do have a dipstick to worry about. We used a pry bar to pop it off the dowel pins. It was in a little bit of a bind. We didn't have it perfectly free and ready to go, but you can see it's pulled free. The dipstick is trying to stay with the car, which is totally okay. So we're gonna help it. We're gonna go ahead and get the dipstick positioned to where it's clear of the bell housing. It's gonna wanna fall. We just gotta remember to put that back into place before we bolt the new one back up. Pivot the back end down so we can get the snout out of our way. See, I've raised that up a little bit. And we're gonna do a little bit of finagling out of here. Looks like we've got our cooler lines are in the way. Let's pull those back and out. Okay. Let's see what it takes to go down. Okay, hanging up still on the header, which is not going to be fun at install. Okay, there we go. Looks like we got to do a little bit of twist and shove. Down we go. And there, my friends, is the back of an LT1 engine, supported by a jack. Now here's our wiring harness. We're going to kind of set it over here, off the header a little bit. Feed that later. And the transmission is down as far as it's going to go. Let's shut this off. One thing I always do when replacing a transmission is I'll weld in a drain plug so that it can make servicing and this a whole lot simpler. So, just like coming apart, you put the bolts back in. That one's going to have a stud and a nut. Boom. We've got the bottom one over here. We've still got the dipstick to manage, and we've got cooler lines. But you get it all tightened back up, and then you raise it up and reconnect. So we reversed the process as we discussed earlier. All 6 transmission bolts are back in. Transmission's up into place. Cooler lines are into place. It's hooked up to the C-beam.